Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. It's TheSketchMonkey here. I'm back here at Genesis of Littleton to have a look at this. And I'm going to ask you this. Have you seen a better looking small sedan than the Genesis G70? I think this is so gorgeous. I'm not going to make any redesigns on this car because I think everything is just so good looking on this car. And that is thanks to Mr. Luke Donkervolke, who took over Genesis as a brand in the whole design department in 2020. He's the same guy who designed the Lamborghini Murcielago, the Gallardo. He also had a hand in several Bentley models, and I think you can get some sort of Bentley vibes from this design. So what we're gonna do in this video, talk about the front end design, the side view and the rear, the interior, and then I really look forward to taking this for a drive because I've been wanting to see how these drives for a very long time. Big thanks to Genesis of Littleton for providing this car. If you live in the Colorado area and are looking for a new Hyundai or Genesis, make sure you check them out. I'm going to link their inventory down in the description. Before we jump into the design, let's have a look at some of the spec and tech here. You have a 3.3 liter turbo V6 connected to an 8-speed automatic transmission. Fuel economy sits at around 17 city, 26 highway. The power output is 365 horsepower and 376 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds with a top speed of 167 miles per hour. The price for this specific Genesis right here is $49,300. So, starting with the gorgeous front end and the face, the elegant, beautiful face of the Genesis G70. Genesis has figured something out here. They do have big grills in pretty much every single model that they have, but for some reason, it fits the front ends really well. I think it has to do with it's such well integrated in the rest of the design features or elements in here that it doesn't bother me to have a big grille. I think it actually looks better with having the grille this big. A couple of things though, now that I see it in close here that I would like to change is you see this grille here up top? Down here we have some sort of matte black. Up here it's chromed. I want to have this it can still be in chrome, but I would probably want to have this mesh be in black. What I like about Genesis design these days is that they manage to mix soft organic surfacing with a couple of very sharp clean lines. And what we have in today's Genesis are these two-line design that we have in all Genesis right now. And this is a very strong brand identity for Genesis itself. You have some organic feeling in the lower section and also up top. And this hood design is absolutely stunning. One detail I love about the hood is this Genesis logo on all their sedans and some of their SUVs. This feels like it comes in sliding over a very calm surface of water and have this wake coming out from the wings. I think that's a beautiful touch of the front ends on not just the G70 but a lot of Genesis models today. So in the middle of the grille here you have this piece that looks a little bit out of place, but this is actually the radar, so it has to be there. Not sure if they could have covered this up and have it be behind the mesh, but at least they made the mesh texture a part of this platform itself, so it melts into the overall pattern of the design. In my opinion, this is one of the best looking small sedans on the market today, and let me know if you agree with me, specifically in this color. This is the color that I would pick if I was getting a G70 today. I think this blue is just absolutely stunning. Coming around to the side view of the 2023 GV70, you know what this reminds me of when I look at the graphics and the proportions of this thing? It reminds me a lot of the Alfa Romeo Giulia, and that is not a bad thing at all. I don't know what it is. I think it has to do with this very sharp shoulder line going in, fading right above the front fender here, but still has a connection to the front end graphics in this corner. Talking about these wheels, these are actually 19-inch wheels, and it looks bigger than 19 inches. And I think that has to do with the simple design that we have in the wheels themselves. And the width is 255 in the rear and 225 in the front end. Now this is a car that has typical rear wheel drive proportions. What do I mean by that? You have this long hood, a very sloping and low greenhouse, short overhangs front and rear. However, there is one line that I would like to redesign on the side here. So yes, the more I looked at this car, I kind of figured out there are a couple of things that I want to redesign still in the grille in the front, and then this line at the bottom in the side view. So have a look at this line, how it goes in between the two axles, and have a look at how it connects to the rear end here. This line sits a lot higher than it does in the side view. So what I want to do Not sure if I'm gonna lower the rear bumper line or if I wanna raise this up, have it go in a curvature. I'm gonna play around with that and see what we can come up with to have a clear connection with the line in the lower part into the bumper. Another detail on this car that I would normally change is, you see this chrome trim that we have going around the greenhouse. Normally I would like to have that be in black because it looks more sporty than luxurious, but this is a Genesis and I think it suits Genesis as a brand to have a little bit of luxury feel in their designs, and I think having this being chrome helps with that just enough to go into that luxury feel of the car. And I also like the side mirror design, very organic and sporty. You have the colored caps as well for it with the indicators on the side. Down here, this is actually a functional air outlet from the turbulence that you're going to have in the front wheel well. The air then shoots out right here. I think it also adds to some interesting features in the otherwise very super clean side view of the G70. Now coming around to the rear end of the G70, and this, I love all the views of this car, but if I'm gonna say it again, if I'm gonna have to pick one view, it's gonna have to be the 3/4 rear view, because this is simply stunning, everything that goes on back here. However, I'm gonna do one change to the rear end, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But look at how this chamfers up here into this very subtle. So you have a short, little subtle upswing in the rear trunk here, creating a subtle ducktail in the rear end, and it sends the design off in such a nice way. Then you have a double chamfer here. You have this chamfer up top, this thick one, and the even thicker one right here at the bottom with the camera integrated in the center of this piece. Then it goes into another chamfer in this piece where you have the Genesis stamped out in the middle with the G70 and the 3.3 turbo. You need to show that off, and this is also 4-wheel drive. You can add that as an option for the 4-cylinder or the 6-cylinder to have the all-wheel drive in both these models. And then we have a clear separation with the lower part down here with the more elegant and more minimalist top part of the rear end. Now, when we have a gorgeous rear end like we have on the G70, I like to take some extra time to just talk about the graphics that we have here. I love these taillights. They're so beautiful and sharp and feels like they sit flush and follow everything that goes on in the surfacing around this. We also have the body piece that cuts through this right in the middle. It goes from a little thinner here in the inner part of the taillight and then grows a little wider as we come to the side of the car, adding some dynamic feeling to the tail end. And this being the smaller brother, you have the G70, G80, G90. This can have some more fun styling to it. And I think that's exactly what's going on here with these gorgeous taillights. We still have the two-line design that we have in the front end headlights coming back here in the rear end. Now, as I said, there's still one detail that I want to change here in the rear, and that happens down here. You see we have the reverse lights here, by the way, very far down at the very end of the rear end. But then we have these big elliptical exhaust pipes. They look pretty cool, but what I would like to do is to redesign these, because I don't see any other elliptical shapes anywhere on this car. Not the grille, not the front end, not the side, or nothing in the rear either. So I think these feel a little bit out of place. I still don't want to have them be round or perfectly rectangular. I still want to add some design to them. So I'm going to have to play around with that and see what we can come up with to make the exhaust feel a little bit better connected to the rest of the graphics of the car. Welcome to the interior of the Genesis G70 2023 model year, and it's getting very toasty in here, so I'm going to fire this up and turn on the AC. I haven't used the AC before, so let's see how easily I can figure this out. We got physical buttons for it, so it's not that hard to figure this out, to be honest with you. You have a button for the a dial for the temperature itself. You have a dial separate for the fan speed. And how do I adjust the angle of where the air comes out from is another separated button that you have right here. So very easy and intuitive to jump in here and figure out how everything works in here. You do have a 10-inch infotainment screen, and then you have a cluster here that has a gorgeous, nice housing to it. I'm glad to see that. And you also have a mix between analog speedometer and then the 75% of the screen, rest of the screen is digital. It's a very cool integration. You can configure 75% of this to be pretty much however you want. However, the tachometer line has a physical chrome or silver trim piece around it, so that is always going to stay rounded, whatever you choose to put in that piece of screen. Looking further down here, we have some very simple vents as well, looking pretty traditional, and they're not over stylized either. They look like pretty normal vents, which I'm totally fine with. You have all the buttons for the volume for the radio, for example, and the nav, the map, the radio media, your star button. You can configure this to be whatever you want, and then you have the setup button here as well, which shows you all the features that you have inside of this vehicle. So you can click on vehicle, for example, you come in here and you see the drive mode, the cluster, the climate, and the seat controls. So it feels like you can do a lot. You can do the same features inside of the software, but there are also a lot of physical buttons and knobs for the features that you have in the software itself, and I like to have the option of choosing either or. You have the heated steering wheel, 2 settings. You have the heated seats as well. No cooled seats in this specific G70. Moving further down, you have 2 USB slots and a 12 volt. This does not look like a wireless charger in this specific vehicle here. You have 2 cup holders, and the gear selector is pretty normal. Nothing over stylized here either, with the park button right there. And let's check the reverse camera. You don't have 360 in this, but you do have a map on the right side, and then you have a pretty normal looking reverse camera with trajectory lines when you move the steering wheel. Putting it back in park just like that. Moving further down, this is where it gets fun. You have the drive mode select here. So you have Eco, Comfort, Sport, Sport Plus, or Custom. So the Custom, you can customize it however you want, and then if you want to jump into that setting real quick, that's when you use this star button on the dash right here. You also have traction control off and on, and auto hold, and the parking button to bring up the rear view camera, and the park brake itself. I do like this integration of the center dash. We have this curvature sliding in here, going in, and almost like a little snake going around the centerpiece here, around the infotainment screen, down and into the gear selector. You also have, of course, 2 regular size cup holders right in the middle. Opening this up, you find a regular USB port here. The storage is pretty decent for this type of car, a small sedan, and the armrest has some nice leather to it with nice stitching on the side that lines up from the rear end and on the sides here as well. So looking at the center gauge cluster here, you can press this pages button to see whatever you want, and you can scroll with this scroll wheel to have the oil temp, torque, turbo, engine temperature, and a lot of information going through all this. And now also the tachometer shows up, which is strange because the tachometer now is digital, but it still has the same feel and size and fonts as the analog and physical speedometer. So it's a very interesting setup that they have here in the Genesis G70 gauge cluster. Moving to the doors, a beautifully sculpted doors. It has the silver pieces and combined with the black leather. I think that looks good, adding some contrast between the 2 colors. And the perforation of the speaker holes looks very nice as well. Overall, a very clean looking and organic style of the door panels. Moving on to the steering wheel here, it looks like a pretty normal looking steering wheel. Nothing crazy going on. You have an oval in the middle with the gorgeous Genesis logo centered. Looks almost like a Bentley logo. I wonder if Luke Donkervolge had something to do with that as well, being a former Bentley designer. On the right side of the steering wheel spoke, you have the controls for the pages, the gauge cluster, and the cruise control as well, and on the left side are the buttons for the radio settings. You also have these pedals in the back side, which feels very snappy. They have a nice resistance to them and a clear, distinct quality feel snap to them. I can't wait to see how it drives in the manual when we take it for a short drive in just a minute. Looking up top, there's no sunroof in this, so this is probably the exact spec that I would choose. To have the blue exterior with this sort of toned down interior without a sunroof, because I don't need sunroofs in any of my cars. So this is, for me at least, the perfect spec of a G70 with a 3.3 liter turbo engine. Looking at these seats, very nice looking seats, and you still have the controls here on the side of the seat for the rear passengers. If they want to adjust the seats, they can do that by using these buttons on the side. Otherwise, nice bolstering to it, and we also have a proper sized glove box right here. With that said, let's jump into the back seat and see if I can fit behind my own driving position. Okay, jumping in to the rear seat behind my own driving position, and it is pretty tight back here. I'm 6'1", So if I were 5'9" and we have the same driving position, I would be totally fine. So I just moved this seat forward just a little bit, but I still have some pretty decent legroom here because of these carved out portions of the front seat. The headroom though is fantastic, which again is pretty surprising to me looking at the roofline of this thing. It has a very coupe-like roofline, but I still have plenty of headroom. Down here you have a USB port and some regular good old vents in the center. We've talked about the beautiful exterior of the G70, and we also had a deep dive into the interior, but now it's time to fire up the 3.3 liter twin turbo V6 and hear what this sounds like. Alrighty guys, taking the 2023 Genesis G70 3.3 liter turbo V6 out for a drive. You have 325 horsepower and 0 to 60 in about 4.7 seconds. I have it in Sport Plus now, and it sounds fantastic. It sounds really good, this V6. And it is quick. It's a lot quicker than I expected it to be. It really pulls, and this has some of that turbo lag that I love in modern cars that is becoming rarer and rarer when you're driving new modern cars with specifically twin turbos. You can definitely feel the turbo kicking in here at a specific level. So let's put it in comfort and let's see what happens with the ride when we do that, and put it in automatic, and it becomes your average luxury sedan. I would say the ride is super smooth. This is not the smoothest road we're on right now, but it really sucks up all the imperfections in the road in a very nice way. But you know what, let's put it back in Sport Plus and just have some fun while we have this G70 and really see what the sportiness in this car is all about. But because the exterior feels so nice, so nicely designed, and it looks like a rear wheel drive sedan in its proportions. It looks like a sporty sedan, and it drives just as sporty as well. I'm trying to figure out this gearbox though, because having it in manual, it doesn't really allow me to gear shift when I want to. Even though I'm gonna be below the red line when I gear shift, it still feels like it's waiting a little bit for it. And this has an 8-speed automatic transmission, which feels pretty snappy. All right, so we are in first gear, and let's floor it and let's see what this G70 3.3 liter twin turbo really can do. Let's go. Oh, it's so nice. I love the power delivery in this thing. As I said, this turbo lag just adds to the funness of driving this car. I want some turbo lags in my turbo cars. It's part of the driving experience in my opinion, and this definitely has some of that. I do like these seats as well. They don't look super sporty, but now when I sit in them and going around corners, they definitely hug you just as much as you want in the corners and keeping you not sliding around in them. I love this car. I love the design of it. I love the interior design that we have. 75% digital cluster. It's just a fantastic looking machine, and it feels almost BMW-like driving this thing. The BMW has a little bit more punch in their gear shifts, and this is angled slightly more towards luxury, but overall this is a great package and absolutely a great daily driver, specifically with this 3.3 liter twin turbo and the all-wheel drive. Huge thanks to McDonald Hyundai outside of Denver and Genesis of Littleton right here. If you're interested in this specific car or any new Genesis or Hyundai, make sure you go check them out. I'm going to link that down in the description. And thank you for watching. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video.